very interested in, as I always am, in the comments that you make, my dear friend. But what you've described, oh, Harry? Yeah, Harry, I'm going to pair with Kennedy.
Yes, I
President, tomorrow I will have a better pie chart for colleagues to look at. The money that comes in through the bill is to be distributed primarily to companies, entities, developing new technology as to how to solve the very question you raised, namely, will technology be available for the sequestration? So it's just not as if it's going to be distributed like leaflets dropped all over. This money is going for the purpose of trying to improve America's resources of energy.
Well, if the Senator would yield,
yeah.
According to the earmark list I have, $191 billion goes to worker training, $171 billion goes to mass transit projects, $237 billion goes to natural resource and wildlife adaptation, $288 billion goes to federal programs for natural resources, $342 billion goes to international climate change, $300 billion goes to agriculture and forestry, and $68 billion goes to reforestation. Only, under the numbers I have, only $136 billion of the trillions of dollars that are coming in go to energy efficiency block grants, and that's for local governments.
Mr. President, I would say to my good friend, give me until tomorrow. You read off correctly some of the allocations, but each of those allocations has some benefit to the problem of the CO2 and the global climate change. Each one of them is carefully thought through. So tomorrow I'll be able to give you in greater detail, once we get before us the actual amendment or the bill on which we're going to hopefully continue our debate and the amendment process. The second question that you asked about the nuclear program, there is nothing in any of the bills that have been put into the record thus far, but I have the amendment here to initiate a very significant program to address what the distinguished senator said is the need for nuclear power to begin to expand using the current base, which, as you well know and I well know, has been reduced in the last 12 to 14 years to where it's hardly in existence in the United States, either manufacturing or the educational. But I've got that handled. And lastly, I hope that you will spend a little time on a provision that I've got in this bill by which the President of the United States is given authority to at any time correct inequities or problems that he thinks are incorrect.
It was 3 minutes.
Have I not 17 minutes also?
Senator from California had reserved 2 minutes of her rebuttal.
All right, but I don't wish to go over that. I can finish my 17 minutes and yield that back for the benefit of other colleagues, because I've had my fair share today to talk about this bill.
Okay. Well, I just wanted, before my friend left the floor, Senator Gregg, to thank him for a meeting that we had in his office where he gave me this great idea. And as a result of that meeting, I say to Senator Gregg, we took another look at the bill, and half of the bill is going back to consumers. Actually, a third of that, there's 3 pies. One, $800 billion goes in a tax cut. Senator Inhofe said it's not specific. We did it as far as we could. We know it's a fund for tax cuts. And $900 billion is a deficit reduction trust fund, and $900 billion goes into a fund so that utilities can help our consumers. So I want to thank him for that contribution. But you know, when my friend came before the committee, I was so hopeful he'd join with us, because Senator Gregg did a beautiful speech. He said, states alone can't solve the problem. I believe Congress must take action to limit the emissions of greenhouse gases from a variety of sources. He talks about mandatory limits on greenhouse gases. I honestly thought this bill that we've worked on would be something my friend could support. And I would say to talk about a consumption tax, you can make up anything and call it what you will. There's no consumption tax in this bill. This bill is modeled on the acid rain bill. The acid rain bill works the same way, cap and trade. No one ever called that a consumption tax. Thank you.
If I may return to my allocation, 17 minutes, and I won't take the full 17 minutes.
The senator from Virginia has.
But I'd also say to my good
minutes.
friend from New Hampshire that I'll call to your attention Section 434, in which Congress has oversight on the use of these funds. Congress can change them. So
That's what I worry about.
Well, Mr. President, I recognize that you've got a point there. But, you know, this situation where I devised a provision to give the President the authority reminds me of my early days in aviation. Unfortunately, I never fully succeeded to become an aviator, but used to have a stick in an airplane in the old days before all this fancy stuff, and when we had tandem seats and bi-wing. Believe it or not, I flew in them once or twice. You push the stick forward, you pull the stick back, you can roll it, the President has the stick, and he can change this thing if this bill is wrong. But, Senator, we've got to get this train out of the station, start it rolling down the rails. 50 states are trying to devise their own framework of laws now. That's got to be a nightmare to industry, in particular the power companies that got to serve a multiple of states. We simply have to show the world this country can lead. And no one is a stronger leader than you in this body. You understand that.
Mr. President, the Senator would yield for just a brief intercession.
Go ahead.
I agree with the Senator. And in fact, the Senator from California clearly states my position, which is that I support initiatives in this area. I support mandatory initiatives in this area. What I'm concerned about is that these allowances, which really are a consumption tax in my opinion, will essentially be used to greatly expand the government. If we were to take that section out of the bill and just basically take those dollars and put them back to the taxpayers without having this huge section which essentially creates a huge new initiatives in all sorts of different areas, I think you'd have a very workable bill.
Well, Mr. President, I would say to my good friend, where do we get the money to perfect sequestration? That troubles me the most. I do not think science has proven that we can actually capture the CO2, cost-effectively transfer it, and put it safely into some type of repository, well, an old gas well.
If the Senator would yield further,
yes.
Mr. President, if you're going to limit dollars spent to technology advancement, I guess I could be receptive to that, some percentage. But the vast majority of the dollars, that's not going to take that many dollars compared to the number that we're dealing with here, which is $6.7 trillion. If you want to take some percentage of that and use it for the expansion of technology, purely a technology side, that may make sense. But this bill goes way beyond that. It initiates all, it's got all sorts of initiatives in here which are only at the margin of the issue of technology advancement, in my opinion. Where the dollars really should go is reduce the tax burden for the people who are going to have to bear the burden of the higher energy taxes.
Well, Mr. President, I simply say to my good friend, we have a difference of opinion. I'll conclude my remarks. I want to congratulate the two managers of this bill, distinguished Senator from California, the Senator from Oklahoma. I've been here a few years, and I know a little bit about managing bills. I've had that privilege many times, but it's been done fairly, equitably, in a very civil way, on a highly controversial subject. May it remain for the balance of the time in which this institution, I hope, devotes to this bill and comes up with some solution to the problem. We simply cannot do nothing. I yield the floor.